This picture was taken, it's one of a series taken over Los Angeles, California in the autumn of 1989 at sundown by Mr. Joe Clower, who looked out the window of an office building he was in, ran down to his car, got his camera, and started snapping pictures. Here it's a little bit fuzzed out because it's approaching the camera so fast that it's growing in size as the shutter is open, and fuzzed it out. But he watched, continued to take pictures. It moved around to his left and began to descend over along the side of a tall building and over a lower building here, and came down, was moving back and forth in a slow zigzag pattern down over this building like this. He snapped that picture, and then it slowly moved around to the right again, back to the right, the direction it came from, and back into the shadow from the setting sun. And here's the final picture. Well, I beg your pardon. That's next to the last picture. It's moving back now, and here we have the last picture taken where it's now in shadow again, and we can see the shape, the profile, and the outline a little bit better. This next picture was taken over Death Valley, California, by Michael Davey, a friend of Joe Clower's. The three men, Joe Clower, Michael Davey, and Steve Thompson, were together in the desert looking for fluorescent rocks when they had their first experience with a UFO. They all three saw it. Nobody got pictures of it. It flew on. But sometime after that, Joe Clower managed to get a picture. He bought a Polaroid camera and he got one picture, had copies made and sent it around to Mike Davey and Steve Thompson. Then later, Mike Davey got this picture in Death Valley, and after that, Steve Thompson even got a picture also, and they kept sending them around to each other. Here's another one made by Mike Davey there in Death Valley, and here's one made at Titus Canyon, which runs into Death Valley. This was a little later in the same day, and Mike Davey is moving out of the Death Valley area when he saw it again and took this picture. Here's a picture taken over a place in California. This is also Titus Canyon. It's a different craft. It was still later in the day, and Mike Davey has moved on up the road and up the canyon some distance where he got this picture. Then Joe Clower's friend Steve Thompson sent him this UFO that he had taken out in California near Antelope Canyon. Sent him this picture and told him a little bit about the story. This next picture was taken by Steve Thompson again, and he didn't furnish. He sent this along with the one just before this to Joe Clower, showing that he had taken two pictures himself now, and he's using a little plastic, 35 millimeter plastic hand camera that was a small one with a single shutter speed, 1/35 of a second, no focus adjustment or anything like that. It's the common disposable kind of camera. This next picture was taken over Canaima, Venezuela, in January of 1990. Now we're beginning the decade of the 90s, and this is the first one. Taken by Mr. Ray Harcourt, a retired Coast Guard officer from Long Island, New York, who was vacationing near Angel Falls in Venezuela and was camped out at Hacha Falls. It's a little sub-falls there, a 2-hour hike from Canaima. Early the next morning, he saw what he thought was a water tower above the low hanging mist, a low fog that the sky was blue above it, and he went for a camera. By the time he got the camera out and got it ready, the mist had risen a little bit in the rising sun, and the object is just in the lower levels of the mist. It was projecting this red beam to the ground. He managed to get this one picture, and then it rose and disappeared in the mist. He couldn't get a second one. This picture was made over Palominos Island in Puerto Rico on the 6th of July of 1990 at 5:30 in the morning by Mr. Guillermo Corday, standing on the deck of his own yacht, moored in the harbor there, in the anchorage there, and looking out across the water at the early morning sun. He saw the water begin to move in a circle, to rotate like a whirlpool in the water. Then it began to get a bulge in the middle of the whirlpool, and the top of this object, metallic object, emerged, rose out of the water, began ascending into the air. Here you can still see the water running off the flanges of the craft as it ascended. It flew into the clouds and disappeared. This next one is a series of pictures taken at Tver, Russia. It's a small suburban area north of Moscow on 3 March 1991 by Alexander Pavlov and Alexei Vasilov from a local television station. This is from a television film clip. They were out here in the middle of a morning, or kind of a misty, foggy morning, when they saw the object on the other side of the river. And here is Alexei Vasilov's shoulders on the right-hand side here. His friend is standing a little bit behind him and shooting the images here. And there it moves across. Now Alexei is pointing at it. It's moved on past Alexei now. He's on the left-hand side. The object moved back and forth over the area across the river. This picture now was taken over Pacific Palisades, California in the spring of 1991 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, again by Mr. Joe Clower. He's coming from lunch at a little sidewalk restaurant there and walking to his car when he saw this flying object above the street. When he got to his car, he grabbed his little Polaroid one-step camera, snapped this photo, and then got into his car because it's flying away down the street and began to follow it. He's following it down the street now and shoots this picture through the windshield as he's starting to catch up to it. And then it speeded up, and he's still following it down the road until he comes to a break in the vegetation on the left-hand side, stopped his car, jumped out with the Polaroid, and snapped this picture. He pulled that film out and watched it as it made a turn at that point and began going back up the beach in the direction that it came from, where he got this last and final picture on the Polaroid film. This picture was taken over Puebla City in Puebla State of Mexico by a young man, Mexican man, Luis N., a young adult, and I think he's 20 or 21 years old, of the city of Puebla, who began hearing voices in a state between sleep and waking in the morning, and in a reverie state, and the voices were giving him places that he didn't know what they meant at first. Then he suspected they may be giving him rendezvous points, and after several of these, where he didn't try to do anything, he decided to go to the location that was mentioned that morning, and he took his cousin with him in his car, drove to the spot, and the object appeared immediately. He got a picture of that. Then they started driving from there towards the airport. It passed the car on the right-hand side. He got a picture through the windshield, which I don't have here. And when they got to the airport, they found it hovering over the communications tower at the airport, and he took this picture. Took another one here. It's out the scene at the top there. Not too important. We'll go on. Here he handed the camera to his cousin and said, "Take a picture of me." And he's sitting on a little cement stub wall here, looking at the object while his cousin snaps a picture of his head in the picture with the object. This is a blow-up of the same object there. You can see that it has very symmetrical structure and form. It's not a cloud perception. It's not a smoke mass. It's nothing like that. Here's a picture taken over Denver, Colorado in May of 1991 by Joe Clower again, who looked out the upstairs window of his house and saw this beautiful domed craft hovering over his backyard. He went for his Polaroid camera and shot this picture through the thermopane glass of the upstairs bedroom window of the object over the yard. Then a few days later, he's downstairs in the kitchen, and he on impulse, went and looked out the kitchen window and saw this object over the backyard. And he went for the Polaroid, and he stepped out the back door and snapped this one picture of it here, watched it for a few moments, and began to circle back and move over his house. He snapped a second picture here, both Polaroids, and had them in the camera. This picture was taken over Stonehenge, England, in the summer of 1991. Jeff Woods of Bristol was visiting the Stonehenge ruins when he snapped a picture of the ruins just for a record that he'd been there and of the ruins. He did not see the object in the picture there, but when the developed print came back, it clearly shows a structured object. It's clearly registered in all layers of the emulsion of the film. It has color. It's reflecting the rays of the sun, and he's got the big rocks there. The whole picture shows a lot more of the rocks, but the object is too small to really make out any detail if I had the whole picture in here. This next one was photographed over Lublin, Poland. We don't get many good pictures from East Bloc countries. And this was taken on 31 May 1991 at 7:50 in the morning by Mr. Robert Janik, a young resident of Lublin, who looked out his apartment window and saw this over the town. And he went for a small handheld plastic camera, Instamatic 135 camera, stepped out on the porch and snapped this one picture of that object in the sky. The object was moving. When he snapped the camera, he moved the camera. There are those light cameras. You push the button, you also push the camera a little bit. So it doesn't have the best resolution in the world, but it is a picture from Poland. This next picture was snapped over Campo Grande, Brazil, in December of 1991 by Carlos Medeso from Campo Grande, who was working with 3 men near Punta Pora on the Paraguayan border when they saw this strange flying object over a hill some 2 kilometers away. The top of the hill was this side of that. A little orange light came out of the bottom of the object, grew big on the tops of the trees below, and then dissolved into a small point and went back aboard the craft again, the disc again. And Carlos snapped one photo of it while it was in its largest stage. After it flew away, they walked to that area to take a look, and they found that the leaves on the trees in the area of the yellow glow there were beginning to wilt from radiation, heat, or something. This next picture was snapped over Denver, Colorado by a neighbor of Joe Clower that knew that Joe Clower was taking pictures of UFOs. The neighbor saw this over a building site near his home, snapped a picture, and gave it to Joe the next time he saw him, saying, they're out here. I got one too. Here's another picture taken over Mexico at Iguala Guerrero in 1991 by a reader of the Mexican UFO magazine Revista OVNI, published in Mexico City. The reader sent the picture to the magazine and asked them if they could explain what it was. He didn't give a name or a return address, so he said he didn't want any attention, didn't want anybody coming to him. They could have the picture. This next picture was snapped at the Eisenhower Tunnel in Colorado in January of 1992. Mr. Joe Clower again, coming out of the tunnel in his car, saw this object in the sky. He pulled his car off to the right and snapped this first picture through the windshield, and there you can see the rear view mirror in the upper right-hand corner. And the object was slowly moving away. He stepped out of the car and snapped a second picture of it. This is a picture of the same object withdrawing from the scene. This next picture was taken over the Fiji Islands in the Pacific, and notice that there's 6 orange lights in a circle in the sky and an object below here. James Parker Jr. of San Francisco, on vacation in the Fiji Islands for some deep sea fishing, upon returning to port late in the day, watched 6 orange lights rotating in a circle in the sky above him. He had been watching these for about 15 minutes. And then a dark flying object came in from the right, darted in from the west, and hung there in the sky for a moment, during which he snapped the photograph, and then it ascended into the sky, joined the 6 circles moving rotating in a circular fashion, joined them, and the whole thing ascended into the clouds and disappeared from sight. This next picture was one of a series taken at Tulancingo in Hidalgo province of Mexico by Mr. Hector Carranza Garcia and his friend Rolando Briseño, who were walking between 2 small towns on a dirt road. They were carrying an Instamatic 110 camera, Hector was, 110 camera, and they looking for opportunity shots to get some pictures. Looking up, they saw this shaped object in the sky, which they immediately proceeded to take pictures of, and they snapped the last 4 frames of film in the camera of the object as it moved about. Now notice that this is circular in shape, has 3 hemispheres on the bottom. It looks very much like one of the remote control vehicles used by the Palladians in Switzerland in the investigation we carried out there. Here's another picture from that series at Tulancingo. Here's another. You can see it at edge profile again. And another as it's starting to leave the scene. And that's the last one. It's now moving off in the distance. This picture was taken over Canyon City, Colorado in September 1992 by Mr. Joe Clower, who was looking for rocks. He had his dog with him. The dog was running around. Clower looked up and saw this object, went to his car, got the Polaroid, was taking a picture of the object when the dog ran into the scene. he whistled or said something to the dog to get him out of the scene. The dog just stopped and looked, so he snapped the picture anyway. Next, here is Vancouver, taken over Vancouver, British Columbia, in the 17th of October, 1992. A group of young teenager, high school students, began seeing this strange object flying over their local neighborhood, and they'd seen it a number of times, by which time they decided to obtain a camera with some film and try to get some pictures of it. They had another opportunity. They saw it when they're together, sent one of the children to the home that had the camera. He came back in time to start snapping pictures. They snapped over half the roll of pictures at that time. Here's one of them. Here's another picture of it at the same time. Here's another picture. There's a date down there in the corner, 17 October, 1992. The building you see here with the oval windows is a hospital building in Vancouver. Here you can see that it is a double-flanged object. It has a high dome and two flanges, one above the other. Now, here is, they had a second opportunity. They snapped those pictures, had them developed out. The children saw it again, sent one of their members for the camera, snapped the second series of pictures. This is one of those. There were several in the second series. I got a third and a fourth series, but it would have taken up too much time to put them all in here. This is the only picture ever taken on panoramic film or a panoramic shot of a UFO. This was taken near Braunschweig, Germany on 8 March 1993, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Just after lunch, Mr. Karsten Brettschneider was walking in a wooded area there. He was a bird watcher. He was going to take pictures of birds when he came upon this shiny dome disc that was hovering low over the scrub in the area, and it began to ascend as soon as he stepped into the clearing. He readied his camera and got this one picture before it got too high. He changed the film and got a second picture, which I don't have in there, and then the object was too far away for a third picture. This picture was taken on the 10th of March of 1993 at Ochre Point, Maslin Beach, Australia, by Mr. Eric Thompson, who was standing on a bluff overlooking the ocean. He had read about a photo contest in his newspaper, and it offered a prize for the best sunrise picture. So he got up early in the dark, went to Maslin Beach, which he thought would be a good place for a sunrise picture, which would be to his back here. And he was standing there. He got his pictures of the sunrise, which weren't too spectacular that morning. And he had turned around, was standing on a bluff looking over a sand quarry there at the beach, when he saw far out in the water, he saw a circle of white water, like white caps in a small circle, running in a circle. And as he watched, a bulge rose in the water, and the water began running off the center of the bulge, and then this metal dome emerged and slowly rose out of the water to about 100 feet. Then it began moving towards the shoreline, where he readied his camera and got this first picture. As he was watching, a small dark object appeared at wave top level, moving at high speed. It came in close, made one circle around the larger craft. Here you can see it beginning the circle. Came on around, leveled off underneath, and ascended into an opening that appeared in the bottom of the larger craft and docked, and the whole thing flew away together. Maslin Beach, Australia. This next picture was taken over Honolulu on 15 March 1993 at 12 noon. A family, John Atherton and his wife Cherry, were staying at the Pleasant Holiday Isle Hotel on Lewers Street at Waikiki Beach. You can see Waikiki Beach in the lower right-hand corner there, the blue waters of it. And it was checkout time, and John decided to take one last picture of the city before they checked out. He stepped to their 12th floor balcony and shot this one picture, folded the camera, put it in the baggage, and they left. When they developed the film in Los Angeles later, they found this object in the picture, which John did not remember seeing, but he wasn't looking very close. He just snapped the skyline. Remember this picture because exactly 3 years later to the month, a young couple from Australia did about the same thing, and I'll show you that one too. This next one was taken over the East River, New York City, New York Harbor, on 12 April 1993 at 1:20 in the afternoon. A commercial landscape photographer was setting up his camera for a new skyline shot from the east side, or from the west side of the East River there. looking towards the city when he saw two workmen working down on the riverbank. They were shouting and waving their arms and pointing out over the water. He looked and saw a roiling in the water and a bulge. The water was running off the bulge. A metallic dome began to emerge. He picked up the camera on a big tripod and aimed it by hand with a camera tripod in his arms and got this one picture of the object ascending. He was able to roll the film or change the film and get one more picture of the object much further away, but it was too small to be useful. We could only make out that it was the same or a similar object, at least, of the same proportions flying away. This next one was photographed over Ocotlan in Jalisco, Mexico on 24 April 1993 at 6:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Raul Dominguez Lopez was walking his dog in a high scrub area there early that morning. He was in the habit of walking his dog early in the morning before 6 o'clock or around 6 o'clock, and he had seen this object several times. He prepared a camera and decided to start carrying it with him in case he ever saw it again. And he finally did. He had the camera with him, and he opened the camera and started taking pictures. He got this first one here. You can see there are 4 window lights, or if that's what we want to call them, around the dome, and one dark. Here he snapped another picture, and they're all illuminated here. He snapped another picture, and 2 of them are dark. He snapped 4 pictures, actually. Then it ascended overhead and began to rise vertically until it rose out of sight in the clouds and was gone. This is the last picture snapped at Ocotlan. This next picture was taken at Canaraville, Utah in June of 1943 or 1993 by Mr. Joe Clower, again, back in that area prospecting for fluorescent rocks once more. He felt a presence, looked up and saw this, grabbed his camera and got the one picture. This next one was a picture that comes to us from Sweden. I'm sorry, from Poland. We don't get many from there either. This was taken at Wasas Grajewski, Poland, on the 26th of August of 1993 by Eugeniusz Fudali, who was out in a scrub area with a camera looking for birds when he spotted this unusual circular object flying low above the bush there, and he snapped this one picture. This is the second picture at Wasas Grajewski in Poland. And we may have a third one here. No, we didn't put it in. There was a third one, an enlargement. This picture was taken over Mexico City on the 16th of September 1993 during their Independence Day parade. It's a flight of Northrop F-5 fighters of the Mexican Air Force in parade formation. A police officer on crowd control duty down in the street watching the formation saw it approaching a disc-shaped object that had already passed through another formation of airplanes and through a flight of helicopters, and he snapped this picture getting both the ships and the object in the frame at the same time. This next one was taken over Gulf Breeze, Florida by Mr. Ed Walters, who saw this object approaching from over the water towards Gulf Breeze. He grabbed his video camera, ran out on the veranda of his house, began taping the object as it moves towards shore. He continued taping, and it began to ascend, to rise at about a 30-degree angle. He heard an F-14 jet fighter approaching, but he was concentrating on the object, and he kept it in the viewfinder, and when the F-14 entered the scene, it eclipsed the object in the viewfinder. That was an Navy F-14 fighter. Here's another picture taken over near Ocotlan in Jalisco State of Mexico. Let me switch my cards here if I could find the rubber band. This is near Guadalajara, on the highway from Guadalajara out towards Mexico City on 16th of February 1994. A passenger in a station wagon riding in one of the back seats, looking idly out the window, saw an object that he had seen twice before. He recognized it as a disc-shaped object, a shiny metallic disc-shaped object that he had seen. He called forward to the driver to stop the car. He wanted to get out and take a picture of it. They pulled the van off to the right-hand side of the road. He got out with his camera and snapped this picture. Notice another car has already stopped ahead of them here on the road, on the right-hand side of the road also. People got out of it also and watched the same object. He snapped the second picture which is, there was camera motion here and there's excitement in snapping the pictures, and it's not nearly as clear, but you can see there's another car coming down the road on the highway here, coming in their direction. This next one comes from Mexico, also from Amicameca in Guerrero State. An unknown photographer, a photographer who insists on remaining anonymous, snapped this picture of the object out over a scrub area there, and it was passed to a friend who took it to a television station, local television station, having a program on UFOs. They showed it on the screen. They didn't know who the photographer was because the friend wouldn't release the name. And the television station began a search. They finally found the man and found that he had taken several pictures at the time. Here is about the third one after the one you saw. It's moved around to another angle. You can barely see the object in this printing of it. And here's the limb of a tree. And here's an enlargement that shows you, gives you an idea what it looked. It's not too large. Let's see if we got it. Here it is again, further densified by overprinting to reveal the details of the object. Here's the branches of the same tree here. Next, please. Here's one from Basilica de Guadalupe in Mexico. It's a very famous religious shrine in Mexico City, in the central district of Mexico City. It was taken on 17 July 1994 at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right after an evening mass. Jesus Romero and his family had come out of the church from mass and saw people in the street looking up. And they looked up and saw a round, dark object flying back and forth over the roof lines of the basilica and its outbuildings there. Jesus, the younger boy, teenage boy in the family, had an Instamatic 110 camera with him, and he began taking pictures, had a fresh roll of film, and he started with zero, and he snapped the whole roll, 12 pictures of this activity over the Basilica de Guadalupe. Here's another one. Give you an idea. This is dirt over here. There's the object over another dome in the basilica. Here's another one. They were all little square pictures like that. This next one comes from Montemorelos in Nuevo León province. And here again, the picture was brought to a television program by a spectator that was visiting in the studio. And he showed the picture to the television moderator. They put it on the program, showed it to the public. The man that brought the picture had no knowledge where the picture come from. He had seen it in the hands of a friend and said he was going to the television station, asked to borrow it, and the friend let him have it. And starting an investigation and going back to the friend, they found that this was taken in a certain state or certain part of Nuevo León state, and the television crew spent days trying to identify the locality and find anybody that knew anything about it. They finally trace it back to Pepe Martinez, who was with a group of hunters that day, and Pepe had returned to the base camp early to start a fire for a barbecue lunch. And it's about high noon at the time, and as he was starting the fire, he still had his camera over his shoulder, and he saw what appeared to be a glint in the sand, made him look up, and looking over his shoulder, he saw this object. He had time to open the camera and snap that one picture. He rolled the film to snap another picture and passed out. And he woke up on his stomach in the sand with the camera about 10 feet from him. He didn't know that he had snapped the second picture. He was only aware of snapping one. But when he got the developed prints back from the photo shop, he found that the second picture had been taken, and that's what it looked like. While the television team was trying to run down Pepe Martinez, they were in his neighborhood now, and they're asking neighbors for closer directions to Pepe Martinez's home. When one of the neighbors said, they were explaining why they were there. The neighbor said, I took a picture of a UFO myself. And he ran in and went in his house and came out with this picture of a strange object, all right. It was flying in the air. He saw it approaching. By the time he got back out with the camera, it was quite low like this and descending slowly into the scrub. He took a second picture, I didn't put it in here, with the tops of the grass eclipsing the object. He estimated it to be about 30 to 40 feet in diameter. This picture comes from Camembero in Guanajuato State in Mexico. There was a well-known Mexican UFO researcher, Arturo Romero Garcia, who has written a number of articles for the Mexican UFO magazines, even some Western magazines. He's well known all over the country there. He had a 12-year-old son that began telling him that he was seeing UFOs over the backyard. Of course, Arturo Romero doesn't believe a bit of it. He thinks his son is teasing him. And the son has come in several times for his father to come out and look at the UFO over the backyard. He hasn't given in yet, and he's doing something in the house when the boy came back in. He said, "Would you come take a picture of me and my friend before he leaves?" And his dad picked up the camera and went outside. That's what the friend turned out to be, and here's the 12-year-old son taking a pose here with the object over his shoulder. So the UFO investigator finally got a picture in his own camera of his own son with an object that he's been pursuing for many years. Here's a picture from a series taken over Gulf Breeze, Florida, on the 24th of September 1994. Now, this series of pictures never got any publicity because the photographer, seeing what was happening to Ed Walters and other people that reported sightings and events, decided not to report it to anybody. He had shown it to a friend of mine who was interviewing witnesses on another sighting, and he mentioned that he had taken pictures himself, went in and got the whole set. There was 12 of them. Showed them to my friend, and my friend succeeded in getting copies of the pictures, sent them to me, and I included 2 of them in my calendars, one on this slide. I may have another one in here. Here's another picture of the object. This started when Phil Sackey came home from work, and he got out of his car and he saw up in the darker developing storm clouds, he saw a dark round object moving in and out of the clouds. And he got out of the car with his camera. He took 4 pictures of the dark object at cloud base level, sometimes, a couple of times, partly obscured by cloud matter. He came in the house, set the camera on the table where his wife is setting dinner out, went in the bathroom to wash his hands for dinner. While he's doing this, his wife calls, says, "Phil, your friend is back out over the yard here. You better come take a look." He came back out, and this is what he saw hovering over the backyard, and he snapped the other 8 pictures on the roll of that object. Here's one more, and that series of pictures by Phil Sackey of Gulf Breeze, Florida. And one more, that may be the last one. No, I got another one here. And another. Okay, this next group of pictures, that's still Phil Sackey. This next group of pictures was taken over Teotihuacan Pyramid, that's Pyramid of the Sun, in Mexico City, on the 25th of September, 1994, at 7:30 in the evening, the afternoon. Samuel Garcia was with his father, Juventud Garcia, on a tourist visit, taking pictures with a cheap Instamatic camera. When they saw this object moving, there's the top of the Pyramid of the Sun there in the lower part of the picture. And the boy, the 13-year-old boy, I think it was in this case, took this first picture. The object moved around to another angle away from the pyramid. He snapped the second picture. Very good pictures for cheap type Polaroid or cheap Instamatic type camera. This next series of pictures was taken over the reservoir at Zitacuaro in Michoacan province, where Arturo Romero Garcia, the man who photographed his son with the object over his head, has been interviewing witnesses at the reservoir for many months about objects that are seen to come out of the reservoir, ascend into the sky and fly away. Other objects are seen to approach, hover, descend, and enter the waters of the reservoir at about a 30 to 40 degree angle without a splash, and descend beneath the surface and not come back out again. So he has been here several times interviewing witnesses and guards who have all seen this. He's been given pictures that other people have been taken, and he's chosen a vantage point where he can see much of the reservoir, where he sits and waits and watches himself between interviews to see what he can see. He finally got his opportunity, and he took 3 pictures. There's number 1. Oh, boy, it's got the scene at the top. Number 2, maybe we get it in the scene here. Number 3, there's the 3rd picture, and after this, it descended, entered the waters of the reservoir, and disappeared. Somebody going to lift it? Okay, let me back up. Here's number 2, and here's number 1. Okay, This next one was taken by Arturo Romero on another day, on the 10th of February. This is 5 months later, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He's back at his favorite vantage point there, and he saw it, and he got two pictures. This is the only one I have in here. The other one, he changed the light settings. It was a little darker, and it was in a slightly different location. This is another printing of the same picture you just saw, showing the whole scene. Here's the second one with the darker, after he's changed his light setting on the camera, or the speed. Here's a picture taken over Gulf Breeze, Florida by Mike Hawkins on 11 October 1994. He's a local resident who is interested in UFOs, was collecting other people's photographs of the objects over Gulf Breeze. Always wanted to get his own picture. Had taken pictures with a video camera on at least 5 different occasions, but he came out of his little trailer home, saw this object hovering over the trees in his backyard, ran back in, got his camera, and got back outside in time to snap this one picture of the object before it was gone. Finally got his own picture. Here's a photograph taken over Hidalgo City, just outside of Hidalgo City in Michoacan province of Mexico, on 1 November 1994 at midday, about noon. Filiberto Sanchez Peña was walking in a wooded area there when he saw this object moving in the sky. He watched it for a few minutes, then he heard the sound of a heavy truck approaching, and he saw a lumber truck coming down a forest trail out of the woods, loaded with logs, and it had 2 men and a forest ranger sitting on the log pile on the back, and 1 man in the truck driving it. He stood in the middle of the trail and waved his arms up and down, forcing the truck to stop, and got them all to look at this. They all climbed off the truck, stood in a circle watching it. The forest ranger had a Polaroid camera, a ranger camera over his shoulders, and he opened it up and he took 3 pictures of the object as they watched. There's picture number 1. Here's number 2. Here's number 3. Now, the man that saw it the first time, seeing the ranger taking the pictures, tapped him on the shoulder and says, "Could I buy a copy of those?" And the ranger said, "Certainly." They exchanged addresses, and the ranger mailed those 3 copies back to him after they were developed out. This picture was taken at Salvatierra, which is just outside of Mexico City, in Guanajuato province, in November 1994 at 6:30 in the evening. Juan Aguiar had just returned from work, and looking up as he's getting out of his car, he saw this object hovering in the sky over his apartment building. His wife was standing in the door looking out. He told her, "Keep an eye on that. I'm going to get a camera." And he ran in and got the camera, came back out in time to snap 2 pictures. There's one, and there's the second one. Salvatierra, Mexico. Here's a picture taken over Coajimalpa in the Federal District of Mexico City. That's the Central District, on 24 December 1994 at 11:30 a.m. by the Victor Olmos family, who had stopped along the highway there to look at a construction project in work. When they saw this object hovering over the same construction project, or just this side of it, had the camera in hand there in the car, and they took this one picture, the object flew away. This next picture was taken over Passo Fundo, Brazil. That's in Rio Grande province of Brazil in 1994 by an unidentified witness who sent this picture into official UFO published by A.J. Gaviard down there. The interesting thing about this is, first of all, it's a flat black picture, a fuzzy black picture. It looks like it might be light absorbing because we can't see any details in it. Now remember this, we have a number of pictures. There was an almost identical picture taken in 1976 at Passo Fundo. Here you see the power lines as a single pole and only one power wire running on it with some telephone wires on the top, but the object is the same, flat black, fat lenticular shape, hovering over the same field area as the last picture. This picture was taken over Canaraville, Utah, by backpacker Steve Thompson, a friend of Joe Colares, the 3rd member of the original prospecting group. He was hiking in a canyon there near Canaraville in southern Utah when he saw this circular object. He spends about half of his time backpacking in the wilderness areas, and he tells me that he knows he's never alone when he's out there. He's taken about 8 or 9 series of pictures of these objects over these remote areas by himself alone. And this one was one of the recent ones taken in 1994. But a few months later, in January of 1995, that's the same series here. In 1995, he's hiking in the Anza Borrego Desert in California, which is the southernmost desert area bordering on the Mexican frontier, when he looked up and saw this beautiful object. Got a fantastic picture there. He's using a cheap little 35 millimeter Instamatic camera. Here's a picture taken over Pensacola, Florida by a resident who insists on remaining anonymous, who, looking out over the bay, heard a stealth bomber out over the bay. Looking out, he saw a disc-shaped object hovering at low level over the water out there. He didn't know whether the stealth bomber was observing the disc or the disc observing the bomber, but he began taking pictures. He snapped 8 pictures in all. Here's another one, the disc and the bomber in the same picture frame. That's all I put in there of that group. But they continued through a series of 8 pictures. This picture was taken right near here, Scottsdale, Arizona, by Mr. Joe Clower. He's working down here in March of 1995. And he felt the familiar presence, looked up, and saw this object passing over the work site. He went to his car and got his little Polaroid camera and started snapping pictures. There's number 1. If you look closely, you can see an orange blister to the right-hand underside of the flange. There were 3 such orange blisters spaced equally around the underside of the flange there. It was moving slowly across in the sky. He got another picture here, another Polaroid picture. You can see the blister on the left-hand center side on this picture. Snapped another one. Here you can barely see it in the center on the right. He continued to move away. There we can see that it has a dome on the top, a rounded dome that wasn't visible in the other pictures. And he finished, that was the end of that series. He finished the pictures. He finished his work, and going home, he saw the same object again in the evening. Now it's getting dark, it's sunset. The orange domes had become luminous on the bottom side, and he stopped the car and got out and took this one Polaroid picture in the second series that same day. Well, I don't know how those got reversed, but there's the last picture of the first series, and I thought I had them in the right order. Now, the same Joe Clower, a few days later, in March of 1995, is working in the Chandler area, in an industrial area over near Chandler, when he looked up and saw this object, went to his car and got the Polaroid camera and took this one picture of the object at that time. Now, here's another series of pictures that comes from Moscow, from Russia, from Ostenkino, another suburb just outside of Moscow, in October of 1995. In the early evening, on an unrecorded date in 95, these TV cameramen were out on another assignment when they saw this brilliantly luminous object moving in a cloudy sky. And there's 3 men here. One's with the camera. 2 friends are pointing at the object. It began to descend here. You can see, well, the friends are out of the picture in this sequence. Came down to ground level. There's one running towards it. Looked like it touched the ground or came down very near ground level. As they all 3 started running towards it, it ascended into the air again, began to fly away. There's the last picture on. You can see the lines here from the video camera. That was a live motion sequence these pictures were taken from. Here's the last picture that we've made from the stills from the video film of the landing at Ostenkino. Now, here's a picture that was made at Salvador de Jujuy in Argentina. Jujuy is the northernmost state in Argentina. This is made on 21 November 1995. And I want you to remember this one. It was made by Hugo Batallanos, and it represents an object that they first observed as the flat black image forms. This one has begun to take on color and shape when he took this picture. But when I finish the series that we're on, I'm going to go into this case a little further. So remember this, you'll see it again when we introduce the new information developing. This next picture was taken over Guayama, Puerto Rico by Jose Maria Fernandez, a contactee who has taken at least 6 different sets of pictures. He has taken pictures. He's a contactee and an abductee also. He has noticed that when he is going to a rendezvous site that there are other contactees that meet him there, that he meets there, sees them for the first time. And then they are taken aboard the spacecraft one at a time by being levitated aboard. And Jose has taken pictures of one of the other contactees ascending into the air, going aboard the ship, and then he handed his camera to another contactee at another time and had him take a picture of him. I don't have all of these in here because it's a long story, and it involves a lot of pictures. It involves pictures of at least 4 different kinds of spacecraft. There's one series of pictures of one emerging from the water, and then a second picture shows it fully emerged and a few hundred feet above the water. A second one that came out behind it alongside, and a third one just emerging. But I didn't have time to put them in here, and they're not the sharpest pictures anyway because they're clips from live video film that we'll do another time. This is another of the pictures taken by Jose Maria Fernandez in Puerto Rico. It's a different ship operated by different entities making contact with him there at these times. It's going on today as we sit here. This picture was taken near Denver Airport by Joe Clower, driving his friend Steve Thompson, another one of the 3, to the airport to catch an airplane. This was taken in December of 1995 in the early morning, and as they were approaching the airport, they saw this from the car. They stopped the car, both got out, and Joe Clower took this picture with his little Polaroid camera. This next one is taken by Joe Clower again in North Denver at Spear and Broadway. A neighbor of his had been building a monument for a park, a monument series for a park there at Spear and Broadway, and he was going to put the finishing touches on it for a dedication the following weekend. He asked Joe to go down with him and take pictures of him putting the final touches on the monument, and Joe did, and the fellow is up on a ladder on a monument over here to the right. When this object appeared to the sky, Joe snapped this picture. It's to the left of a very easily identified building there. Then it moved behind the building, and he turned to take the picture of his friend. He saw it come out the other side, waited, and it entered the scene here, and he got the object and his friend putting the final touches on the ball on the top of the monument there. Now, he had witnesses to this. This man in the front hasn't seen it yet. They called the people after they took the pictures, and they stood and watched it, but this was the last of the film in the camera, and he only got those 2. This next series of pictures, if you remember the one that was taken over Honolulu by the young couple from the 12th floor, this is March of 1996, 3 years later to the month, when Pam Randall and her husband, staying in the same hotel on the 4th floor, did the same thing. Just before checkout, the husband stepped to the veranda, the balcony here in front, and snapped a final picture of the skyline, the city skyline at Honolulu. And here you see the lower buildings. You can see the parking garage has been built up on the right-hand side there, now obscuring Waikiki Beach. But it's the same scene 3 years later, and what appears to be the same or a very identical object. This next picture was photographed over Crestone, Colorado, in the spring of 1995 by Joe Clower, who was running his dog in the wilderness area there. When he saw this flying object, he had his camera in the car, grabbed the camera, and took this one picture before it flew away. This next picture was taken at Coacalco in Mexico City on 25 May 96 at 3:03 in the afternoon. Remo Strauss, 25 years old, was in the park taking pictures of a friend's spaniel when the spaniel scurried and ran. Looking around, they usually do this when a hawk is in the sky. Looking around, he saw this object slowly rising, turned his camera and snapped this picture of it. Got another picture as it was ascending and going away, and a third picture, and that was it. Now, we've heard a lot about crop circles. Here's a picture of a crop circle near Telegraph Hill, but notice what's above the crop circle in this particular picture. Either the UFO is interested in a crop circle, or it has something to do with its fabrication or being made, and the witness is there to view the crop circle when the object appears. There was another picture taken over a crop circle just a few days later. The crop circle is a rather unimportant one here. You can barely see it. And in the picture out there to the right is the same shaped dark object moving into the scene. She saw both of these images with her naked eye before she snapped the pictures. This second one here was made at Towsneed Copse in Wiltshire, near Avebury. The lady declines to let us use her name. This next series of pictures was made over Sweden, central Sweden, on the 14th of July of 1996. The primary witness, and there are several witnesses in this case, is also a contactee who has been aboard this spacecraft and is still being taken aboard on a sequence of events that's still developing as we sit here. He has taken at least 3 sets of photographs now of the object that has been aboard it twice that we know of, and maybe have gone aboard again. He and another witness refuse identification and actual location of this event because it's still going on and they don't want it interrupted. Live video footage was also shot during some of these events, and in particular during this particular one that we have the slides of here. Simultaneously, the video film was shot by one witness and the still pictures by another at the same time, and we can see the motion of the object moves rapidly in a rather erratic motion in the sky, which seems to be typical of UFOs, but certainly not airplanes or helicopters or balloons or any other flying objects that we're familiar with. Here's another one of those pictures from Sweden. You can see a little evidence of the flange on the right-hand side there. Here's another one. You can see a little bit of the flange development on the right and the left in this picture. Here's another one. You can still see it a little better here even. That's probably the last one. I believe that was number 6. Here's number 7. This last picture is not too impressive. The object is down here in the lower left-hand corner, made at Ecatepec, Mexico. That's in the Federal District also of Mexico City. On the 21st of July of 1996 at 3:30 in the afternoon, an anonymous young photographer saw this object moving in the sky, began taking pictures of it. Here, notice a branch coming into the scene in this particular frame. And here's the next frame with that branch in scene, and the object is ascending beyond it, and we can see it here framed between 2 parts of the branch there. This next picture was photographed over, we got to change the carousel again. So we can have somebody switch the carousel, and then I'll back it up so that you can get that one out. Photographer? Who's got the carousel? There's another tray of slides right over there. The next pictures were taken at Muchalat Inlet in Nootka Sound off Vancouver Island, British Columbia, in August of 1994. A fisherman, Gary McAllister, with his own fishing boat, was picking up lobster traps off Vancouver Island when he noticed a white lenticular object in the sky slowly descending towards a little island just off the bow of his boat there. And as he watched, it looked like it was going to land on the water. He went below, got his camera, and came back up on deck in time to snap. Is it ready to go? Yeah, go ahead. Came back up on deck in time to, he got the wrong carousel in there. Oh, really? We need the one that's only got half a carousel of slides in it. And he came back up on deck in time to snap pictures of the object, the white lenticular object that was descending. Okay. Here we have it. Descending towards that little island, he realized as he's taking the pictures that it's beyond the island. He continued to watch, snapped another picture of it with some of the treetops in the foreground, then it descended out of sight behind the island. I find this one interesting because it's very similar in shape and profile to one of the Palladian ships that we saw in photographs of in Switzerland. This picture is one of a series taken over Pacific Palisades, California. It's a beach area, a scrub area of North Palisades Beach, in September of 1996 at about 12:30 noon. Again, by Mr. Steve Thompson, the backpacker, is up in that area hiking, walking in the area when he feels the presence again, looks around and sees this silvery metallic object, opened his camera and began taking pictures. There's one. Here's another. Here's another. And there's a final one. He took 4 pictures that day. That's Steve Thompson. Now, the same Steve Thompson, in December of 1996, was backpacking in Bryce Canyon, Utah, a beautiful park area, walking alone with his backpack, his camera, when he feels the presence, looks up and sees this beautiful object in the sky above him. Now, if you notice, we've had a lot of pictures in here by Joe Clower, and the objects are always different. Each event is a different event. Same thing with Steve Thompson. He's taken a number of series of pictures, but the objects are different in each series. And neither one is having contact with the intelligences. They don't know who they are, where they come from, or what's going on. But Steve Thompson took 3 pictures in this series at this time. There's another one. And here's the third one. Now, at our Congress like this in Laughlin, Nevada, last year in December, or this year, early this year in December, in January it actually was, on the 22nd of January, the second day before the end of the Congress, one of our participants, one of our spectators at the Congress, bought a ticket and sat in the crowd just like you are out there. We had a break at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a half-hour break between presentations for people to rest and get a drink. And she had gone to her room to wash her hands, and she stepped out on the balcony to get a final picture of daylight, because it's going to be dark before she gets back there again, of the scrub area across the river from our hotel, the Green River, or the Gold River Hotel in Laughlin. And as she was framing the desert scene, she saw this object coming into the scene from the right. It was quite a bit closer to her and was flying at an angle away from her across the scene. She snapped this one picture and rolled the film. By the time she could roll the film and snap the second one, it's over about where this little speck of dust is in the scene, and not much bigger than that, going away. So we had to wonder whether we had visitors at our Congress taking the same break and leaving about the same time that she did, going someplace else for some reason, because that was there at that time. Now, this picture, again, is taken by Steve Thompson in early January, a month after the Bryce Canyon, Utah pictures. This is taken in Topanga Canyon, California, just north of where Steve Thompson lives. He's almost in his own backyard. He feels the presence. He's walking out there alone, feels with his camera, feels the presence, looks up and sees the object. He took 3 pictures again. He often takes 3 pictures in a series, and that seems to be enough for him. The pictures are not really important. I don't have the third one in here, but this one was made by Steve Thompson a few days later at Blue Mesa, Arizona, in mid-January, that is, when he was hiking in the area and looked up and saw this object. The same Steve Thompson is back in California at Mount Shasta when he sees this object in the sky, and he took 1 picture here. All of them are silvery domed discs, but they are a little different in style and shape each time. Now, remember that Mike Hawkins, the investigator over in Gulf Breeze, had gone to Roswell for the big meeting there. Liking Roswell, he arranged to buy a small ranchette just out of town, a mile east of Roswell, and he's out inspecting the property that he's interested in. It doesn't include all that you see here. There's just a little house and a garden and a small plot out of scene in the foreground here. When he heard a helicopter. Looking up, he saw first the helicopter, and then he saw a disc that the helicopter seems to be interested in the disc. He opened his camera and started taking pictures, and he got that one. Then he got another one here as the helicopter is circling back. He got still a third one here as the helicopter is getting closer to the disc. He said he took 2 more pictures and that he was sending them to me, but they have never arrived, and the letter didn't go back to him. So we don't know where those are at the present time.